Former President Donald Trump is due to make a virtual appearance later today in New York criminal court. Judge Juan Merchan is expected to lay down the law that Trump cannot disclose certain evidence in the hush money case, especially on social media. The protective order comes after Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records last month. Trump's attorneys call the order extremely restrictive, but DA Alvin Bragg insists it is necessary. Joining us now, NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman, and Politico's White House bureau chief and way too early host Jonathan Lemire. So welcome all. Vaughn, first to you. You've been a Trump watcher for a long time, since 2015, I think, in Iowa one day on a rope line, as I remember, your first encounter. Anyway, he is barred from reviewing the sensitive evidence without his lawyers present. Well, what is the DA seeking if Donald Trump should violate the order? We know that he is not exactly disciplined when it comes to speaking out in defiance or in opposition to what his lawyers are even telling him.
Right. Everything that we have watched from Donald Trump since those 2015 rope lines, Andrea, is evidence that the district attorney took to the judge in order to get this protective order, to bar Donald Trump from revealing the evidence that is presented to them as part of the discovery process by the district attorney. When we're talking about criminal trial proceedings, there is the gathering of evidence, and the defense counsel is able to look at what the district attorney gathered as part of their defense. But what the district attorney's concern was that Donald Trump was going to personally reveal, whether it be through social media posts or through public statements, that discovery. And in order to have a fair trial, the district attorney wanted to guarantee that Donald Trump was not going to reveal what was discovered ahead of the trial and before a jury was impaneled. And that is where you saw the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, go to the judge and get the approval for the ability to, in the case that Donald Trump were to reveal this discovery and this evidence, that they would be able to bring a prosecution forward for criminal contempt in the second degree, which would potentially not only bring a fine, but potential imprisonment. This is really trying to put some teeth on an effort to have Donald Trump not reveal the details of this trial ahead of time.
And Harry, in a separate legal issue, the New York Times is reporting that Special Counsel Jack Smith, in his investigation into the classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago, has subpoenaed the Trump Organization business documents coinciding when Trump was in office. The Times say that the records are related to 7 countries, including China and Saudi Arabia. So what are you reading into that? Do you think there's a nexus between that and the classified documents, or could this be a whole separate subpoena issue?
I do think there's a nexus, Andrea, and we already know that the subpoena was looking also for information about a deal that he made after he had already taken the documents. I think this is Smith looking to try to figure out, did he do anything untoward with the documents? You see those 7 countries. One of them, to me, is not like the others. That's France. And we know in particular that he showed a real fascination with Macron in looking at these classified documents. Now, the reports are it may not have given much information, new information anyway, but the fact that Smith was opening up what is a whole different area of inquiry. If he turned around and gave these to anyone and used them for leverage for a business deal, that would be a whole nother crime, a serious one. And it's sort of, as Smith did a couple weeks ago, opening a new area about fundraising. So I think it mainly shows that he's leaving no stone unturned.
We already knew, of course, that he was giving what was considered very favorable treatment in any foreign policy context, giving Saudi Arabia the first foreign trip, for instance, when all other presidents have always given that to Mexico and or Canada, taking turns between our closest neighbors. It was very, very unusual that he would go in 2017 to Saudi Arabia. So there was always a question about that and the business dealings that his son-in-law and son have had, and his Treasury Secretary with Persian Gulf countries in particular. Yeah. So, Jonathan, yet another legal issue, a new one. Again, E. Jean Carroll last night filing, trying to use Trump's own words against him. She's adding comments that he made during that CNN town hall just 24 hours after a jury found him liable for defamation to another defamation lawsuit, a previous one against him. This time, she's seeking at least $10 million. What do you make of this?
Well, it was certainly predictable, and there's no shortage of legal issues for the former president. I mean, this was seemingly pretty obvious. There's speculation that very night when Trump appeared in that pretty controversial CNN town hall and attacked E. Jean Carroll, calling her a whack job, among other things, denied again that he ever knew her or encountered her, which I might add he did again on Truth Social this very morning. So her lawyer suggested they would look into it, and they may file suit afterwards, and now they have done exactly that. We will see. It will be some time before we know whether this money is ever paid out. Of course, Trump is appealing even the original decision, so this could take a while. But it keeps the story in the headlines. And he was, as much as he denies it, found liable for sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll, of this Manhattan writer, some 20 plus years ago. And again, even if he's able to dismiss it, and even if polls suggest it doesn't matter too much right now in the Republican primary, well, that could be a different story in the general election, particularly if Trump is trying to court women voters, particularly those suburban women voters who were proved so decisive in 2020.